ma'am.
Okay, let us continue with our discussion. I'll be giving you a copy of this. This is actually a study last year by the pharmacy students, and I already asked permission from them na I'll be using their study as reference para sundan ninyo siya in terms of formatting. Or kung napa mo ilaing makuha diri sa ilahang study, you can do so. I'll be posting this sa Schoology. So again, please follow the format kasi ito yung tamang format na ginagamit natin sa school for the research studies. Now, the schedule of the proposal defense is December 1 to 11. You just wait for the final announcement kung asa dapit din ha sa December 1 to 11 ang inyuhang schedule for the medical technology department. Kasi kanang December 1 to 11, that is the schedule sa whole school para sa mga proposal defense. Wala pa lang mo na finalize kung asa yun din hain sa medtech, but you have to finish your paper sa bakay mong tiro. You have to finish your paper 1 week before the proposal defense. So most likely sa taron 27, wala na lay 1 month, kailangan na ninyo mahuman inyong papel. So unsa dapat ang i-include sa proposal defense? You have here syempre the title page. Please follow this format. And then we have the sample approval sheet. Just edit the mga naka-bold din ha. Tapos, just wait for the announcement kung kinsa inyong panel, pero most likely murag si Bin gyud na dire ang chairman. Ang other 2 members i-announce na lang. And then you have to make also the acknowledgement following this format also. Just edit the names of the person that you want to thank. And then no need for an abstract because remember the abstract is a summary of your research paper, and we cannot do that since your paper is not yet finished and you don't have the findings also. So again, the abstract is not included in the proposal defense, but you will have to have your table of contents with this format also. The list of appendices. Later, I will discuss what are the things that you need to include in the appendices also. The list of figures, if ever you have figures. And the list of tables, if you have tables also. And you don't have the plates anymore. I don't know. Kung na-experimental nga study din you have to have the list of plates, but this should be included in the final defense because the plates class are pictures, documentations sa step-by-step procedure that you're going to do in conducting the experiment. So sa final defense pa yan siya if experimental ang paper ninyo, pero if hindi experimental, then no need for the list of plates. Now, syempre, the most important thing for the proposal defense is you have to have your introduction. Again, please wait for my comments also, but please, basig magsige rin maghulat sa akong comment hani, wala mo nagpa-check kay Ma'am Dali. You really need to have your paper checked by your advisor. And then revise your paper according to her recommendations. And syempre, the statement of the problem, all the things that you need to include for the introduction, like the hypothesis, significance of the study, and then theoretical framework, the conceptual framework, and then the scope and the limitations. I think yan yung last na ni-require ko sa inyo. So you have the introduction parts 1 and 2 there in Schoology. But meron pa tayong part 3 for the introduction class, and that is the review of related literature and studies. And ito yung pinakamahaba na subsection for the introduction. Wait lang ha, kay nalibog ko na yung kalitong sulti time person. Okay, sorry for the interruption. Again, this will be the third part of the introduction, and I hope you will work as a team para ma-finish yun ninyo, makompleto ninyo sa kadaghan ani. Pero di na ko siya isa-isahon karon kay lahi man ni ilahang topic. Okay, Miss Maliga. Oh, wait lang. And then after class, sa taas ka yung review of related literatures, kadyot ha, taas yun siya. You will also include the methodology. So ito lang yung kailangan natin for the proposal defense, the introduction and the methodology part. So this morning, I will be teaching you how to make your RRL, and I will start discussing one part of the methodology only, the research design. The rest will be discussed sa finals, the research local, sampling, and so on. But you need to include this again in the proposal defense. Medyo mahaba pa yan. And itong results, remember IMRAD format, introduction, methodology, results, and discussion. The results and discussion will be for the final defense na. So wala ni siya ha, dili ni siya included. Siyempre wala pa man mo'y nakuha nga data. So far, nagsugod pa man ta. So wala pa po ning discussion nga taas po kaayo. But after class, your methodology, you have to have your references. I have already taught you how to do this last time. So you can review that. Paano ni siya ginahimo, 'di ba? I-arrange natin ni sila alphabetically. And then after the references will be the appendices. So take note that you have to include the appendices during the proposal defense. Now, what are the things you need to include in this section? You may include sample letters na addressed to people that you want to ask permission. Like for example, this time, letter to the dean. This is actually a letter asking permission from the dean to allow the students to conduct the research in the school, or other researchers include letter to the dean asking permission to conduct the research somewhere else. So muna siyang pinakauna, letter to the dean. And if you have other people or organization that you need to ask permission before you can conduct your research, please include that in the appendices. Pero sample letters lang ha, sample letter. Kasi ito, since tapos na sila sa paper nila, this is now their final letter na meron ng signature ni dean. And meron ding signature ko kasi ako yung advisor nila. Pero ang sa inyo, hindi ako yung mag-sign ha. For example, mag-letter to the dean kayo, noted by ng advisor ninyo. So, sino yung advisor niyo? Siyempre si Ma'am Dalig. Okay? Sa iyaha mo magpa-sign. Oh, i-post na ko later for your reference. And then sila, kailangan, this one is a letter to the City Health Office class kasi, di ba sa introduction, I asked you to include statistics internationally, nationally, and locally. And they had problem looking for literature about the statistics of diabetes in General Santos City. So what they did is they personally asked the statistics from the City Health Office, thus the letter. They have the letter forwarded to the City Health Office just to ask for the statistics of diabetes. You can do that if you have exhausted all means just to look for the local statistics. Kung wala gid may makuha, that's the time you do this, ha? And then kaning uban na mga results, I mean mga results naman gud ni siya, so no need for this ha. Kay result na ni nila sa ilahang research. I mean this one is the reply of the City Health Office, current count ng merong diabetes sa Gensan. So reply na siya. So wala na appeal ha. Kani pod aside from the letters, kung experimental lang inyong study class, you also have to have a monitoring sheet. The monitoring sheet is just a draft. kung asa ninyo ibutang, isulat ang inyuhang results during the experiment. Kani kay accomplished monitoring sheet man gud ni, so nanay mga nakasulat din ha mo ang results sa ilahang experiment. Pero sa inyo ha, draft lang kay proposal defense pa man siya. Okay? And then kani mga computations wala na ni siya kay during man ni sa ilahang pag-conduct sa experiment. But you have to also include a map of the research local in your appendices. The research local is where you are going to conduct your study. So for them, they conducted it at GSD-MSFI. That's the map. So kamo kung lahi ang inyuhang research local, you have to include another map there. What else that we need to include? The informed consent. For descriptive studies, you have to include in the appendices a sample questionnaire. Again, sample questionnaire ninyo and a sample informed consent. So I will let you see later also an example of the informed consent. Oh yes, Risha. Saan nyo kukunin yung inyong sample and saan kayo magkakandak ng testing? Sa ganin inyong study, Risha? Nakalimot ako sa kadaghan. Ano to? Ano ito? Experimental ba mo? Or ano? Descriptive. Pag descriptive example, Pulumalok, you're going to get your sample sa Pulumalok. So it should be the map of Pulumalok. Pag magkaiba, both local ang ilagay. Tama na. Okay. Both local. For example, if like mag-collect mo og water within General Santos City lang, you can include the map of General Santos City. Tapos kung asa man mo magpa-test. Kung diri lang gihapon mo sa Jensen magpa-test, then the whole map of Jensen na lang para isahan na to. Pero kung sa Davao mo magpa-test, you can have the map of General Santos City, but in the research local mismo, doon sa part sa paper talaga, hindi sa appendices, i-divulge nyo lang doon kung anong laboratory ang magkakandak ng testing. Sa school. So pero kung ingana, map na lang of General Santos City and included, i-appeal niyo dito sa map ang GSD-MSFI. Okay. Kani wala na mo ingani ha kung descriptive, pero kung experimental, na-adjud mo i-plates, kada step nga inyong buhaton dapat na-agid na siya documentation. So, para dili mo makalimot, basig na human na mo og experiment, tas wala dahil mo nakatake og picture and pangitaon yun na siya sa panel. Pero so far sa proposal defense, wala ni siya appeal ha, kaya syempre wala pa man ta nag-conduct og experiment. Ang mga descriptive, wala ingani ha. Ang mga mag-interview, syempre dili na to pwede ipakita ang nawong sa ato ang mga human participants. What else? After the plates, for the proposal defense, this is also very important. Syempre, the curriculum vitae. So you can follow their format also. Please include the 2x2 picture. But sa picture, walay mag-selfie ha. Mo gina ang pirmi ginareklamo ni Dean basta mga proposal defense kay na mga picture nga naga-selfie. So it should be formal. If na pagkasunduan ninyo sa grupo ninyo na mag-business attire kayo, business attire lahat ha. Pareha sa ila naka-business attire ni sila tanan. Pero kung magsabot mo sa inyong grupo nga mag-school uniform lang sa inyong picture, you can also do that as long as naka-school uniform pod mo tanan. So I hope that is clear. Now, let me show you this one. This one is for the sample lang of the descriptive study. This one is a medtech study. Katapagay na pharma to, experimental man to. Kani, this one is a descriptive study. So, sa ilahang gibutang, sa ilahang appendices, you have there the survey questionnaire. So, you have to have a sample of that. Survey questionnaire nila, whether you make your own questionnaire or mag-adapt lang mo from the existing studies. And aside from that, the informed consent. So the informed consent is actually a letter to the participants securing na yes, nisugot good sila to be a part sa inyong study to be selected or mag-participate good sila sa inyong study. So you may follow this format also for the informed consent. An instruction, the first part will be the instruction to the to the participants. And then we have here the institution, the purpose of the study, procedure ninyo na gagawin. And then if you have identified possible risk or magbibigay kayo ng benefit for them, ilagay nyo din yan siya. And then we have right to refusal to participate and withdraw. And then the confidentiality clause, kasi you really have to promise na you will protect their identity and other personal na mga information. And then you have to include also your contact number here and your email address. And the last part will be the participants' consent declaration wherein isulat niya yung pangalan ug iyahang pirmahan. Pero sa proposal defense, sample lang ni siya ha, sample. Ang sa final defense, sample gihapon kasi di ba we don't divulge the information. Kung ibutang na to dira ang tanang informed consent, makabalo na mi kung kinsa inyo hang participants. So sample lang. And lastly, you will also have the researcher's declaration na nag-explain gyud mo sa ilaha in detail and magpirma sad mo sa last. So mo ni siya ang i-include for descriptive na mga studies. They also include letter to the validators. The validators will be the one to evaluate your questionnaire if that is valid or not. So kung nagbuhat mo og sarili ninyo na questionnaire class, kailangan jud mo og validator. So who are these validators? These are experts to the field. Sa field nato na unsa na inyong ginastudihan din ha. And the minimum requirement is master's degree. So dili pwede nga bisag kinsa lang ha, bisag kinsa lang mo validate sa inyong questionnaire. Ang minimum requirement dapat nakagraduate og master's. The minimum requirement. This is just a sample letter to the validator. If you need someone to validate your papel. And then meron din silang validation criteria kung paano i-validate ng mga validators ang kanilang questionnaires. So yung iba, mga letters na lang, letters to the ethics committee na magpa-review mo sa inyong papel. And just like sa experimental na study, they also have the research local, the map of General Santos City, kasi ito naman din yung kanilang research local. So I think I have presented now both experimental and descriptive na study. Do you have questions? Atong ako mga giingon mo, ito ang included sa proposal defense ha, na kailangan nato na humanon for at least a month. Sa kabulan na lang, mag-defense na mo. Question? Amo kakulbaan ng defense ka dili man mo litsunon didto. Dili pod what you call that, dili man jud mangunsa ang mga panel. The panelists will really help you to improve your paper. Unsa ma'am, November pa. Ay unsa taon din akong ingon. October man karon na. Sa November, magod, you have to finish your paper 1 week before the proposal. So if the proposal is December 1 to 11, 1 week from that, dapat nahuman na inyong papel. Oo, i-post na ko ni siya, Christian. And i-post po na ko tong sample na IMRAD format. Pero ang ako lang ma-post katong sa pharmacy nga study, because sila sa ila lang ko naka-ask og permission. Wala man ko naka-ask og permission from the medtech department to use their study as reference. Pero I believe you are friends with your higher year. If you can ask them personally, if you can have their study as reference, then personal na lang mo mag-ask sa ila ha. Pero ang kaning mga videos and recorded discussions nato and my PowerPoint presentation, i-post na ko ni tanan. Okay? Wala na concerns, pangutana? December 1 to 11, that will be a Monday. So most likely, pangitaon na nasa panel inyong papel November 25. November 25. So, kaya na to na 1 week, 1 month. Wala lang ganing 1 month. Pila na lang ka days. So, ihabol na to. Kasi what if sa 17? What if sa 17? Kasi 17? December 17? Ang gihatag lang ni Dean sa ato December 1 to 11. And then, kano sa ganinang exam? 12, 13, 14, 15. Tapos, according to her, Manggo, dili siya gusto nga after the exam ang defense. Gusto niya before sa exam. Before sa exam ang gusto ni Dean. So, 1 week before that. Yeah, I'll check that, Risha. I did not find time and good to check it last time. Kay na-busy jud kay ko sa akong dissertation. Gahapon ra jud ko kabalik og trabaho sa mga trabaho sa school. Tapos last night, I was supposed to check your paper last night, but I had a sudden meeting and the meeting ended at 11 p.m. So I was not able to finish also checking everything. 15 to 17, I was not informed. Why am I not informed about that? I was not informed about the 15 to 17. I should be informed, right? Because I hold the research office sa school. But let's see. Kay so far, walay communication sa ako regarding the 15 to 17. So far. But let us see. Basig daig nagyod sila nasabutan. Wala pa lang ko na-inform. Pero kung if that's the case na 15 to 17 ang inyuhang defense, so 1 week before that, dapat umanang papel. Isa na ron. Ay, kajot. 15 to 17? Is that not the final exam na Just check ha. Hindi ako kay final exam na nga date. Feeling lang na ako to. Feeling nga day wait. Calendar of activities. December 13 to 15 ng exam. Okay. Maybe it's 16 siguro to 17. Basig na pa exam ang 15. Or 1 week before that. That will be siguro mga December 9. Dapat humanain yung papel. Okay. Kung kung ingana. Okay, so far I was not informed. But kung nanay communication, then I have no problem with the 15, 16, and 17. Okay. Let's talk about the review of related literatures and studies. This will be the part 3 of the introduction. And again, ito yung pinakamahaba na part ng paper ninyo. So when you say class, review of related literatures, we will be dividing it into 2, the literature and the studies. Pag sinabing related literature or literature review, you're going to analyze articles or any published material. Paano natin siya i-analyze? We will be doing summarization, classification, and comparison of the findings of this prior research studies or reviews of literature and theoretical articles. Pag literature review ang ginagawa ha, mag-evaluate ta, kani ba na na-publish na material related sa study ninyo or hindi? Kung related, credible ba siya? Kung credible, then we will include it in the RRL. So, pero hindi tayo mag-copy-pasting. Wala tayong nakita dyan na copy-pasting, right? We can summarize, we can classify, and we can compare and contrast findings of one study to another study. That's literature review. Pero pag sinabing conceptual literature, pag literature ang tawag, it's data free and non-empirical. So any published information, whether sa books man na, sa journals, sa internet, as long as number one, data free, hindi siya result ng experimentation, hindi siya result ng direct observation, so non-empirical. Pero related siya sa study mo, then under yan siya sa conceptual literature. Gikan man na siya diri sa Philippines na publish or from abroad. So sa example, Ana, your topic is about COVID-19. So if you search in the internet about COVID-19, those materials or those information in any article that is not a product of, dili gyud siya kanang direct na research, information lang siya about COVID-19, conceptual literature ang tawag, Ana. So what are the sources of our related literatures? We have the almanacs, the books, you can have the dictionaries if you want to define something, encyclopedias, our handbooks, and you can also search the internet for this. Daghan kayo, most likely ang ato mga related literatures will be coming from the internet, but you can also have literatures coming from magazines and newspapers. Pero if like nag-search mo tas ang inyuhang nakuha is a thesis, a dissertation, whether published or unpublished, ang tawag ana class-related studies. So this is empirically based, meaning product jud siya of direct investigation or experimentation or direct observation. So just like the conceptual literature, it may be coming from a foreign source or a local source. Both are accepted. So what now, again, are the sources of our related studies? We have dissertations, the internet. We have a lot of studies published in the internet. And then we have research journals, mga reports coming from surveys, and the mga thesis, whether published or unpublished, just like the thesis nato sa school, nga daghan kayo na sa library, you can have them actually as reference for your RRL. Pwede to nato siya i-appeal. So it doesn't matter kung nakapublish siya sa journal or wala, as long as result siya sa direct na observation or investigation. And then aside from that, we also have the gray literatures na pwede nyo ring gamitin in your own study sa inyuhang RRL. So when you say gray literature class, these are actually researches na either unpublished or pwede po siya na-publish pero non-commercial na form. Kana ganing walay bayad, niya ma-access lang ninyo sa internet, for example, anytime. Gray literature ang tawag na to, Ana. Now the question is, are they accepted or are they considered credible para masali siya as our own reference ato ang sariling research? So actually, the answer is yes, you can still use the gray literatures as part of your RRL. So aside from those research class or thesis na published, unpublished, or published in non-commercial form, the government reports are also part of the gray literature. We have a lot of that. As in nowadays, we have reports coming from the Department of Health, the Food and Drug Administration. We even have reports coming from our own city health office or the local government unit. Kato sila, bisag sa Facebook ninyo siya gikuha, pero that's the official website, example of the local government unit. And then we have here, for example, policy statements and issue papers ng mga EO, ganin nato executive order sa atoang local government unit. If needed yun siya sa atoang study, yes, you can include that in your RRL. So conference proceedings, preprint and postprint articles, thesis and dissertations, especially those na nasa atoang library class or kanang nasa internet, are called gray literatures, and yes, you can include them sa inyong study. Research reports, mga geological and geophysical surveys, maps, we need the maps for our research local, newsletters and bulletins and fact sheets. all of this can be part of our review of related literatures and studies. Now, what is the purpose of doing a literature review? First thing, syempre, is to find information that is already existing about our topic. Kasi, di ba, we have topic at hand. Gusto natin mag-study COVID-19. So, we want to know what are the things na known na discover na about our certain topic. And aside from that, we do literature review because we want to identify gaps in literature. By the way, when you say research gaps, these are things that are missing or lacking in the current body of knowledge. Kasi for example, COVID-19, daghan naman kayo tag-study sa COVID-19 class. Pero pangitaon nato ang gap. What is unknown? What is missing? And what are these questions about COVID-19 that until now, wala pa ring answer? Or what are these problems that are not yet addressed or solved? So, mo na siyang ginatawag og gaps in the literature. So we are finding that kasi remember, one of the things that we need to consider in selecting the research topic is originality and novelty. So kailangan original, novel ang atoang topic, dili ta gusto nga duplication lang of an existing study ang atong himuon nga research. So again, that is the reason why we identify the gaps. Kasi kung ma-identify nato kani siya nga problem, wala pa ni siya na solve, so diri ta mag-conduct og research. And then aside from that, we can find other people working in our field and identify major seminal works if we do literature review. And then also another important thing is through literature review, we can actually have the methodology or the research technique that we can adapt and follow para sa ato ang research pod. Kung paano nato i-conduct ang experiment, for example. So, di ba, dili man ta pwedeng basta-basta na lang ta magbuhat o procedure to conduct a certain experiment. So basically, gikan na siya sa mga literatures coming from our books. That's how literature review is important. And then, identify main ideas, conclusions, and theories, and establish similarities and differences. So we have a lot of research studies already existing, and we can actually compare and contrast the findings of this study. For example, I think merong mga gustong mag-study last time ng ivermectin. And if you look at the internet, we have a lot of studies sa internet no, na yung mga researcher na nag-ingon effective si ivermectin as treatment or for the prevention of COVID-19. But we also have studies being published na hindi daw siya effective. So when we do our own work now, we will be comparing the findings of this study in our literature review. And through literature review, we can provide a context for our own research. So actually, di ba, when you did your introduction, di ba nag-research kayo? Saan kayo nag-research? Anong ginawa ninyo? Nag-literature review kayo. So sa introduction pa lang class, nagamit na mo og RRL to provide the context of your own research. And lastly, show relationships between previous studies or theories. So these are all the purposes of doing literature review. Now, what are the key points of literature review? When you're going to make your own RRL, you have to include the following things, meaning you have to tell your audience or your own readers of the following. So you have to tell them what the research says. So, na kay nakita nga nga study, related siya sa imuhang study. Pag isulat nimo na siya sa imuhang RRL, syempre you have to tell your reader na kani siya nga study mo uni iyahang nakuha, mo uni iyahang na-discover, or mo uni ang iyahang theory. And then after that, you also have to tell your reader how the research was carried out, or simply that is referring to the methodology. So again, pag himo mog RRL, tas nagkuha mog study from the internet, you also have to include the methodology kung paano nila gi-gather ang ilahang data. And the most important thing is the identification of the research gap. This is to be established gid class ang research gap. Now, what is missing in the existing body of knowledge? That is why you are conducting your own research. Again, research gap is defined as a topic or area for which missing or insufficient information limits the ability to reach a conclusion for a question. That's actually the first step of doing research. We don't really select a research problem na well-studied na, marami ng research na nagawa, nagkaroon na ng conclusion, nagkaroon ng solution sa problem. We don't do that anymore. That is why we identify the research gap. What is missing? Kay dito tamag focus sa atuang sariling study. Okay? Questions so far about the things I have discussed? Anything that you want to clarify? Wala. So, let's continue. Types of literature review. We have the first one here, evaluative review. From the name itself, evaluative, you will be evaluating your sources or your references on how they contributed to the body of knowledge. So most of the time, we use evaluative review in comparing and contrasting the findings of a lot of studies. Just like my example a while ago, like the use of ivermectin as prevention and treatment of COVID-19. We have a lot of studies nowadays for that. And when we do evaluative review, we will be looking on their findings and compare whether they have a different finding or parehas lang sila ng finding so that we can reach into a conclusion. That's evaluative review. But most of us actually do exploratory review. Now, from the name itself, also exploratory, the purpose of our RRL is to actually explore the things that is already known and the information that is already published about our topic. Now, the purpose naman of exploratory review is to widen our knowledge about our research. So that is to sharpen, to focus, and identify research questions that remain unanswered in the specific topic. Actually, the identification of the research gap belongs here in the exploratory review. Kasi we are looking for what is missing in the body of knowledge, or we are looking for more information about our topic. Now, in the methodology section, we actually do instrumental review. We will be looking for sources of the methodologies where we can adapt in our own research. So again, our research paper actually is a combination of all these types of literature review. We can do evaluative, we can do exploratory, especially when we are doing the introduction. No, we are doing actually exploratory review. We are looking for information about our topic. And when we do our methodology section, we will be doing instrumental review. So how this research are being conducted. Yan yung hinahanap natin for instrumental review. Okay, now the sources of literature. I have actually enumerated the sources a while ago for the conceptual literature and the studies, related studies. But let's just classify them. We can classify them actually as primary literature, secondary, and tertiary. Pag sinabing primary class, it's the first good nga published na material about a certain topic, meaning kanang first occurrence of a piece of work siya, original. Example, nag-study siya about diabetes, anti-diabetic activity of malunggay. Ang pinaka-unang nag-experiment or kung dili man siyang pinakauna, but a direct direct niya nga observation, direct niya nga investigation, and then naghimo siya thesis for that, primary literature na siya. So like reports, conference proceedings, ang mga thesis nato, and kana mga data nato from our experiments, like experiments nato in the laboratory, primary literatures na siya. Kasi first hand na sila na mga information coming from direct observation, investigation, or experimentation. But the subsequent publication of those works actually belong to the secondary literature. Pag secondary na lang siya, like I'm giving a commentary about the result of their experiment. I'm not doing the experiment. I'm just giving a commentary on the results of their experiment, and then I publish something about that belongs to secondary literatures. So example, we have the journals and then the books. Diba? Sometimes the books can be a compilation of the results of other people's experiments. So they are not really the ones who are doing the experiment, but they are just getting information from other people. So we cannot call it primary literature. Instead, we call it secondary literatures. And then information's coming from the newspapers or articles and books in which the authors do not really do the experiment, but they are just the ones who interpreted or analyze the results of the research of other people. Secondary literature ang tawag niyan. And lastly, we have the tertiary literature, which we also call search tools because they are made just to compile everything, both primary and secondary literature about a topic. Okay, so we have here examples of tertiary literatures like indexes, yung mga abstracts natin. Meron tayong book of abstracts class na they are compiling abstracts of different researches. Iisa nila sa book. So meaning they are not the ones who made the experimentation or the observation. They just compile. And ang kino-compile nila can be primary, pwede din secondary. Yeah, you can actually do that, but if you are going to write na your RRL, you don't need to really inform your reader na this is coming from a primary or a tertiary or a secondary literature. Later I will teach you how to write your RRL. Okay? Pero for the sake lang that you know the classification of literatures, you have to understand this one. So again, you have there also encyclopedias, diba? If you read an encyclopedia, there are a lot of things written there, pero they are not also product of experimentation of the authors, but they are just compilation of the works of other people. So tertiary literature na siya. Actually, the dictionary is also one. And then we also have the bibliographies, textbooks and references when they compile na things or information from primary or secondary sources, magiging tertiary na yung textbooks and reference books. That's how, again, we classify our sources. Now, let's move on to the 5 key steps in literature review. What are we going to do pag kita na ang magbuhat og RRL? So, syempre, first step, we have your search for relevant literatures, and we will be evaluating them. Let's identify themes, debates, and gaps, and then we will outline the structure. And lastly, we will be writing our own literature review. Now, let's discuss them one by one. Starting with the step 1, syempre, search for relevant literature. So, the first thing that you need to do when you're going to make your own RRL is to make a list of keywords. And then you can actually use Boolean operators to limit your sources. Like for example, my study is about COVID-19 and ivermectin. So I will be searching in the internet COVID-19 and ivermectin. So and there is actually a Boolean operator again to what do you call that? I-limit ang scope. sa imuhang makita. Kaya kung imuha lang ibutang class COVID-19, tanan about COVID-19 mo gawas sa imuhang pag-search sa internet. So muna, the use of Boolean operator is actually important. And then we have the step 2. After searching sa example sa internet using the keywords, we will be evaluating and selecting our sources. So please be reminded that not all things written in the internet, especially in the internet, are true. So kailangan we have to be very careful of the information na i-include natin in our RRL. Now, how do we evaluate the credibility of our sources? Most of the time, class, in research, since this is scientific, we don't easily include information from websites that end with .com. Again, pwede siya, pero kailangan kasi supported siya with other materials also. But as much as possible, we don't really include, again, those coming from websites ending with .com or .net. Now, what are the websites that are considered credible para ma-include siya sa ating RRL? Those that end with .edu, kasi these websites are being managed by educational institutions, mga schools and universities. And then .gov, meaning coming from reports of the government. And then, I forget the other one, .org. You can also include things that are written in a website ending with .org as long as that organization is like professional na organization and accepted. Okay? And then aside from that, since the only constant in the world is change, meaning information from the past and discoveries from the past may not be true or correct karon na mga times. So, sa inyong RRL class, I don't want to see researches na 19 kupong-kupong pa. So, unsa ang accepted? Accepted is 10 years backward. 2021 tayo ngayon. So, this will be 2011 to 2021. Okay? Again, ang gina-accept natin, class, na reference are those references published from 2011 to 2021. So, wala ko'y makita nga 1978, 1999, 2001, 2002, 2009. We'll have 2011 to 2021. Iba si mo yung ma'am, wala na dyan ko yung makita, ma'am, 2008 na lang yun. Now, if for example, you really need that idea for your research and then it was published 2005, actually, ang ginahimo na mo, ana, we will search for more source na kanang the same bitaw ang thought niya, iyahang idea, pero published siya on earlier na mga na year, like 2018. Basta pareha sila og idea. Ayun na lang ninyo to gamita tong past na publications. Okay? So that's how we evaluate the credibility of our source. And take note, you have to have your working bibliography para mas madali niyo siyang i-locate, baka may makalimutan kayo. And at the same time, the most important thing is for you to cite your source to avoid plagiarism. So you can use parenthetical citation or you can use in-text citation for this. And at the same time, you have to include them in the reference list. Okay? Questions about the steps 1 and 2? Wala na. So step 3 is to identify themes, debates, and gap. So sa kadami-dami class ng ating ma-search, especially in the internet, we don't copy-paste everything. We summarize, we paraphrase, and we do analysis and evaluation by identifying themes or patterns na mga nagapaulit-ulit na magkaparehas lang yung sinabi ng one research to another, so that becomes a theme now or a pattern. Para isahin mo na lang siya pag isulat mo na siya sa iyong RRL. And then we can also identify debates, conflicts, and contradictions. Like parehas sa ikapila ko na ni siya nga balik pag maingon ng isa ka research na dili effective sa ivermectin tapos kaning isa maingon siya effective man. So you can write both of them in your RRL. In the form na these sources are disagreeing with each other. So you are just informing your readers na merong mga ganitong RRL na nag-exist. And then meron ding mga pivotal publications, like may mga research works talaga that will change the direction of the field. So example, kani ang nag-ingon na kaning mga vaccines nato are really, really effective. Tapos biglang lumiko. Kaya lang, meron silang mga side effects na pwedeng hindi na kayang i-tolerate ng human body. So biglang lumiko yung ating direction. You can also include those things in your RRL. And syempre, the most important thing is the gap. So what again is missing from the literatures so that dira ta mag-focus. And also, you also have to include the weaknesses of these literatures o na nga kailangan nato siya i-address. Okay? Now, step 4. After that, identifying themes, debates, and gaps, the step 4 now is to outline our literature review structure. Nawala tayong requirement class kung pila ka pages ang atuang RRL. Depende na siya sa atuang sariling study. Again, depende siya sa study na to. Naiuban nga 20 pages lang, ang uban moabot og 30 pages ang ilahang RRL. Pero we can use these strategies here na I will discuss in writing the RRL. Pwede isa, pwedeng combination ha, saba mong iro, sorry. Namanggoy tao. Sanay mo abot. Saba kay sila. Anyway, again, you can use one of these strategies or you can use combination of these strategies in your RRL. The first one is chronological review. Pag sinabing chronological review, from the name itself, chronological, parang nagnanarrate ka lang ng mga things na nakita mo when you are doing your research. So this is not just simply listing or summarizing ha. Mag-istorya ka mo, ni muhang nakita na mga information about your topic, pero apilani mo siya analysis of the patterns, the turning points that change the direction of the field, and then you can also include your own interpretation of how and why certain developments occurred. Pero the strategy here is just to narrate everything in chronological order, meaning development of the topic over time. So example, COVID-19, I started with COVID-19. These are the things I have. Syempre, you can, by the way, you cannot use the word I in doing research. Ha? These are the informations na existing about COVID-19. COVID-19 is like ganito, ganito. And then mag-develop siya into signs and symptoms. So ang next paragraph mo are the signs and symptoms of the COVID-19. And then afterwards, yung topic mo nagde-develop over time. So after sa signs and symptoms, ang diniscuss mo na naman ngayon yung mga ginagamit na drugs in treating the COVID-19. And then afterwards, the vaccine. So naka-follow siya in a certain order. Depende sa development ng topic mo. That's chronological. Pero most of the studies na nakikita ko nowadays are following the thematic strategy. Meaning, pinuputol-putol nila yung kanilang RRL based on subtopics or themes. Meron silang mga subsections. Puputulin siya. So for example, you are reviewing literature about inequalities in migrant health outcomes, and then sa mga nabasa mo, you have identified themes or patterns. So gagawan mo siya ngayon ng title. We have healthcare policy, language barriers, cultural attitudes, legal status, and economic access. So I will give you an example later para mas ma-picture out nyo itong chronological and thematic. Kasi ito silang dalawa mostly ang ginagamit in making the RRL. Itong methodological, mostly sa methodology section natin ginagawa because we are looking for methods or research techniques na pwedeng gamitin in conducting our own research. So pwede din tayong maghanap ng studies na i-compare natin ang result ng ganito na method, compare natin siya over the results ng another na naman na method. Pwede natin siyang gawin. And then we will select ano yung pinaka-suitable sa atin and pwede nating ma-adapt. And then lastly, ito namang theoretical literature review is more on the theoretical framework. Remember, in your introduction, you have the theoretical framework. I believe you have researched for the theory that will be relevant sa study ninyo. Dito na to i-anchor ang inyuhang study. So pangitaon na to karon si theory, si models, and mga concepts, again, na relevant sa current study at hand. Now, to give you class an example before we'll move on to the step 5, let me show you this study. Let's go back to the study of the pharmacy students and let's see their RRL na medyo taas-taas yun na. Wait ha. Okay. Nalampas noon. This one is their theoretical framework, by the way. So this one is a theoretical review. They have looked for theories, concepts, and ideas where they anchored their study. Their study is about blood sugar lowering activity of the rambutan. So ang ginawa nila, since we cannot look for theories, educational or psychological theories na pwede i-anchor ang atuang study, ang ilahang study, ang ginawa nila class, they looked for other studies nga pwede mag-explain why they are doing this kind of research. So just like this, ang ilahang plant material is rambutan, and kung basahon nato ang ilahang theoretical framework, actually they are explaining here the reasons why they considered rambutan as a blood glucose lowering agent. So, kung basahon nato ni, kay ingon daw sa literature, rambutan has the following phytochemicals, and that this phytochemical, according gihapon sa literature, can lower down the blood glucose level. So yun yung ginawa nila for the theoretical framework, because again, since this is an experimental na study, we cannot look for psychology or education na mga theories. Pero if we look at their review of related literatures class, as you can see, they actually use the thematic na strategy. Bakit thematic? Kung titingnan natin, meron silang mga subtopics here. In their RRL, you have the diabetes mellitus, and then after that, they have the subtopic Nephelium lapasium rambutan. Gi-divide na nila class ang ilahang mga topics nga gi-include sa RRL. Medyo mahaba itong about sa rambutan, by the way. And then they have the gallic acid. And then the gallic acid actually is the responsible for lowering the blood glucose level. That is why meron silang another subtopic there, and then the glimepiride, ng ilahang mga positive control. So again, naka-divide sa different themes or sections ang kanilang RRL. Okay, that's for the pharmacy work. Let's look at the medtech na study. Asa na ganito? Nawala. Kadyota, let me open it again. Okay. Now, this is for the medtech na study last year. Both of these studies are conducted last year. So this one is the review of the related literature and studies of the medical fake news and fear mongering on COVID-19, yung influence ng vaccine confidence. Vaccine confidence ng millennials. So as you look at the review of related literature, actually they have adopted the chronological strategy. Wala silang subsections here. And then they are discussing the topic based on the development. So mura sila nag-istorya na mauni ilahang nakita ng mga things about their topic. So diretso-diretso class, walay putol-putol. Naka next paragraph na no, pero walay putol-putol class. Diretso na siya, naga-istorya, naga-narrate. So again, we call this chronological strategy. So it is up to you now kung asa mo mas madalian, mag-chronological ba mo or mag-thematic strategy. Questions so far before ta mag-move on sa ato ang step 5? Wala? Wala'y pangutana. Yeah, you can actually do that, Christian. You can actually combine the thematic and the chronological. So for example, you are discussing your topic no about COVID-19 and then you find out na pag-abot nimo aning example vaccines for COVID-19, murag nagkaroon kag urge to discuss them one by one. So isa-isahon nimo sila. So magkaroon ka karon og mga subsections under the vaccines pero nagsugod ka og chronological. So you can actually mix the two. It's up to you. Depende sa kailangan sa imuhang study. Okay? So I hope that is clear. Anything else? Wala na. So the last step is after you have decided kung unsa nga strategy imuhang gamiton in making your RRL is pagsugod na ka og buhat sa imuhang literature review. So ang literature review is just like making an essay na you have the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. So sa introduction, you just have to establish what your study is all about. So the focus of your study and the purpose of your literature review. And then the body will now have the informations you have gathered from the different sources. Now, if you find it necessary to have a thematic strategy, then please use subheadings. And then lastly, you have the conclusion. The conclusion is actually the synthesis. So you may actually write their synthesis and then summarize mo na siya class ang mga key findings mo na nakita mo or nakuha mo from the literature and i-emphasize mo yung mga pinaka-importanting mga information na nakuha mo during the RRL. So that is what you have to write in the conclusion. So as you write, you can follow these steps class. You may summarize and synthesize, meaning you may just give overview of the main idea of the topic that you are doing or you are researching and combine them in a coherent whole. Or you can do analysis and interpretations, meaning you just don't paraphrase everything, but you can actually add your own interpretation to the findings of other people's work. Okay? Pwede nimo siya dagdagan og sarili nimo na interpretation. So, i-discuss nimo ang significance of findings in relation to your literature as a whole. Or you can actually evaluate. So, dili lang taman paraphrasing and summarizing ha. You can actually evaluate na you will mention na this study has this strength or meron siyang weakness na ganito, hindi niya nasagot ang ganito na question. You can add those things in your RRL. And then, please write in well-structured paragraphs. Please check your English, your grammar, the use of sa tawag ani transition words para lang gid madugtong-dugtong nimo ang imuhang tanang nakuha nga information sa kadaghan ato. Especially if mag chronological strategy ka nga daghan na kaayo ninyo, wala siya putol-putol. You have to see to it that the previous paragraph will be connected to the next paragraph. Bisag lahi sila og giistoryahan, you can use transition words and topic sentences para lang jud ma-draw ang connection, ang comparison, and ang contrast. So that's all for the related literature. Any question you want to ask? By the way, itong study ng pharma class, so di ba nag-thematic sila na strategy? Actually, on the last part, ito yung conclusion nila. Meaning yan, nag-summarize sila ng mga important things na nakuha nila sa kanilang RRL. The rest are the body, and then ang sinugdan ato, they have the introduction. Nabasig mangutana mo, ma'am, asa na ang related literature? Asa na pod ang related study? Actually, ginasagol-sagol na siya tanan class. Dili na nato siya kailangan i-separate na maunitanan ang related literature, dinhi nga part maunitanan ang related studies. So when they did class the thematic analysis, for example, in the case of kaning medyo taas-taas, example, kaning gallic acid class, actually the first part is a related literature. They are describing what gallic acid is. Related literature yan siya. Pero actually, after sa mga first parts, naan na din ha ang mga related studies. So, for example, pagbasahon ni mo ning kani siya, methodology section sa gallic acid, this is actually a study. Again, related study siya. So, kaya akong ginaingon na no need to separate the literature and the study. You can place them, depende sa gamit nila. Paano nimo sila isulod sa imuhang RRL. Okay? Questions? Again, about the RRL? You want to clarify? Wala na? Okay, you can ask me anytime sa chat. I hope I'm not really that busy para dugay kayo mo tubag. If mag-thematic, actually, we're not really that strict sa heading. Kaya as you can see, diba, gibutang lang nila sa kilid ang ilahang subheading, example, diabetes mellitus. So again, we are not that strict in terms sa heading, na rule na heading level 1, 2, or 3 for the thematic. Okay ra, butang lang sa kilid. Anything else? Wala na?